program of AFD called Adapt Action that actually targets one aspect of environmental transition, which is climate adaptation. But I think we can elaborate on a lot of the questions that were raised can be thought from this project, from this program. So I can start basically from the strategy, from the upper level, I would say. So AFD, like other organizations, have strategies, and so AFD has this 100% social cohesion strategy, which is coupled with the 100% of project compatible with the Paris Agreement. So it has both this, objective of reducing multidimensional inequalities, improving well-being, promote socio-economic integration, and at the same time having projects that are compatible with the Paris Agreement, meaning that these projects are screened through a selection grid and then passed to the board based on these set of criteria. So environmental criteria, social criteria. And so they are based on this. There are a number of tools that can be mobilized to support the design of projects, from funding feasibility studies, having assessments, preliminary assessment, or ex post assessments of projects. I mean, this is not new, and other organization also does the same thing, as you also mentioned. So I can just give you like 2 minutes on the Adapt Action program, and then I'll try to give some examples. So Adapt Action was founded in 2017, as you mentioned, within the context of the Paris Agreement. So the objective was to support the implementation of the adaptation components of what are so-called nationally determined contributions. So these are the documents that every country was submitting for the Paris conference. And then these documents were updated one time in 2020, and this year these are also updated. So they are submitted for the Paris conference, but like every 5 years to the UNFCCC, the United Nations Climate Change Conference. So basically the objective was to increase the resilience of economies, ecosystems, societies, communities, to improve quality of life. So there was first phase from 2017 until 2022, and now there's a new phase, which, as you said, covers 18 countries, including 6 countries in MENA, and actually the program is just starting. So we started last year in MENA countries, including Lebanon, and the one that you mentioned, so Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine. So we can provide different types of activities, but basically some are on research, so operational research, other on capacity building, and the last component is on feasibility studies for project preparation. So the objective is to help to improve actually the co-benefits, the adaptation co-benefits, or the climate co-benefits of the project that could be funded by AFD. So that's basically the goal. And so one of the called cross-cutting component of this program, it's on social inclusion. So the rationale is that vulnerability to climate change, it's a multidimensional phenomenon. It intersects with many other issues, and I think we touched upon a lot of these issues, so especially in the region, but elsewhere. So issues that relates to the way the society is organized, gender, age, ethnic origin, income level, disability. And the objective through these sub-components to really be able to mainstream these issues within each of the projects that are prepared. So to be a bit more concrete, I can give you some examples. I'll take examples actually from the first phase of the program, so which was terminated in 2022. And at that time, the only MENA country covered by the program was Tunisia. Actually, we had activities that end up in projects that are now being finalized and will soon be implemented in oasis territories in Tunisia. So in the south of Tunisia, there are two projects, one that is co-funded with the Adaptation Fund, and one with the Green Climate Fund, which are two tools, financing tools that exist at the global level. And so basically the objective is to improve, I mean, to work first on oasis ecosystems. But by oasis ecosystem, we refer to, you know, agrosystems where mainly composed of date palms, arboreal, trees and herbaceous crops such as vegetables, fodder, and these, you know, were developed in the, I mean, many of you know that they were developed by population in the desert around water points, and so there is a whole, you know, interlinkage between nature and the way the people were able to make these places, you know, places where they can live. And so these are resulted in very rich agrosystem and ecosystems. Climate change impact these areas in the way that, you know, there is a shortage of water, there can be an increase of risk of fires, a flammability risk due to droughts. And so the project aimed to, you know, improve capacity, support drainage and irrigation infrastructure, agroecology, optimize water management, and you know, economic diversification through, for instance, sustainable tourism. So basically, to make these places areas where the population can still live and do not need to migrate. And so, in this sense, there is a clear, you know, social objective within these projects. First, because they focus on areas that are deprived, and second, because they try to target the most vulnerable. Yeah, this is an example of the kind of project that can be implemented by the program, but actually it can work also on other aspects of climate adaptation, basically on any sector related to water, related to agriculture, to infrastructure as well.
And before I move to Lamia, I just had a follow-up question. I mean, one of the issues that came up today was the issue of unintended consequences and the issue of participation. You know, that, so how is that built in to your both selection and implementation of projects? You know, is there a feedback loop? Is it the feasibility study part? And how do you engage? I mean, I think as it became clear, justice issues are always complex, right? Because there are different competing, I would say, priorities at times. Do you acknowledge that? You know, do you have open discussions? Do you say, well, yes, but this is what the government of Tunisia has decided as a priority, so who are we to second guess them that this is what the country needs? Can you give us a bit of the, I would say, what happens behind the scenes that we don't see? I mean, we see the feasibility studies, you know, I mean, it's written in the pretty dry language, but what sort of conversations, what sort of consultations, and are there lessons that you've taken from other parts where you say, actually, no, this is, we know we're getting the buy-in because these projects are actually turning out to be sustainable?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I was going to mention it in the last part of the discussion, but basically what I can say is that, so of course there are interests that can be diverging to some extent, but basically, I would say that in the first instance, feasibility studies are there to be able to do a diagnosis, an assessment of the needs, of the situation, including of communities, the social aspects. But what is growing also is the idea of having also the population, contributing to the the selection of some of aspects of these projects, some activities that would be implemented by them because they are the most knowledgeable in doing that. And so there's, I'm not sure to what extent it is there, but still it is there in this project, for instance, because they are called for project for income generated activities. So like people are able to propose their projects, and this issue of participation is something that is, I think, increasingly being taken into account, and it's a way also to make sure that these projects also respond to the needs.
Thank you very much. Lamia, shifting to the World Bank and to Lebanon specifically, and we just had a session talking about conflict, environmental damage, and maybe we can start by talking about the role of the World Bank in assessment, because this is often, many of us end up relying on World Bank numbers, and you're an environmental specialist at the World Bank, an institution that's usually dominated by economists. So maybe if you can tell us a bit about how does the World Bank approach environmental damage assessment? What's the value? How do we value an olive tree that's 100 years old, or an ecosystem around these things? How has the bank evolved over the years, or not? You tell us about thinking on bringing considerations, I would say, of justice and sustainability, environmental sustainability, environmental justice, to how it thinks about projects.
Thank you for the invitation, and for giving me this opportunity to clarify some of the information that might not be available on the current activities or approaches of the World Bank. So I'm an environmental specialist, as you said, and my task is either to support or lead assessments related and so focused on environmental aspects, either within a larger context or focused on environment. And this we do a lot, what we call the analytical space of the World Bank. And then there is the interventions, the operations, the projects, programs, whatever. And in Lebanon, we have several examples. I will give a few later on. And there are conditions on which we are imposed upon, and they are evolving with time, to ensure that there is environmental and social safeguards as part of any project. So, and this is the starting point. So any project have to have a kind of a mega EIA system that we have in Lebanon. So there is either a large framework, if we don't have a very detailed identification of the activities. If there is an identification of the activity, we do what we call the environment and social assessment, ESIA, environment social impact assessment. And if it's very detailed, we do a management plan, environment and social management plan. And all these are defined at the very beginning, and many, like our counterpart, whether it is a government counterpart or an agency or an NGO, they have to start with this, and because they are very complex, then you need some funding to start with this. And it starts also with a stakeholder engagement plan and this environment and social whatever plan or framework or whatever. And all this is available in the public domain. So, and there is need for consultation, whether with all stakeholders, so there is an initial document which is published, even if the project has not been approved. So to give you an example, this very famous Lebanon Lebanon Emergency Assistance Project, LEAP, $250 at $1 million, have not been approved by the World Bank board yet. Still, if you Google LEAP Lebanon, you will find a PID, an initial project document that provides the description of all the proposed activities, although it has not been approved by the board. Then you will also find a stakeholder engagement plan, which identifies who are the main stakeholders, beneficiaries, or counterparts, and how are we going to engage with them, and the environment and social framework. And there is an obligation, even before going to the approval process of these projects, to conduct consultation on these environment and social frameworks. So for example, again, for LEAP, there has been 3 consultations organized by the CDR as the implementing agency. One was for all the government agencies. One was for all the unions of municipalities and municipalities who are affected by the war. So they were all invited and presented with the project, initial project, and the environment and social framework. And the third one was for the civil society and academia. So, and the report of these activities is done prior to any approval. If we go one step backwards, how did we get to LEAP? There was a rapid damage needs assessment, which was conducted by the bank, building on all the common methodology of rapid damage needs assessment across the all crises that are affected. In some cases, in the case of Lebanon, because it was very urgent, some sectors were not covered, but the main sectors, including environment, was covered. So under environment, I was involved in this assessment, and the RDNA also is published, is available on the internet. So for the environment, yes, we looked at the ecosystem, at the green environment, and we adopt internationally known methodology. So you look at the losses. So for example, to take a forest, so what did we lose in terms of number of trees? But then you also look at, so this is the damage, how many trees? Then you look at the losses. What was the value added of these trees? We have an ecosystem, and we have a system to evaluate the cost of the services that are provided by the ecosystem, which is filtering the water, avoiding erosion, reducing CO2 emissions, capturing CO2. So all this is valued. So if you look at the RDNA, the environment, the green environment ecosystem was one of the highest damage and losses. And also for the, so we look at the damage, we look at the losses, and then we look at the cost of remediation, or the cost, yes, thank you. So we look at the cost of whether a rehabilitation of the infrastructure or restoration of an ecosystem. And in the case of the forest, if we are looking at the same example, a network, a sewage network, you can repair it within 1 year. But a forest, you can grow the plant. No, it will take us 20 years to regain what we had before. So we take into account all this. So the cost is very high. Plus, you need to remediate from either pollutants or I mean different factors. So this is taken into account and then integrated into projects. Now, I have to say that in the case of LEAP, given that LEAP is an emergency project, the part that was taken out of the RDNA is more the rubble assessment, because people need to get rid of the rubble and restart rebuilding their places, their roads, their infrastructure. And in the RDNA, again, we had an estimation of the rubble, which is around 10 million cubic meter. And that was the cutoff date for the RDNA was in early December. After early December, which is the ceasefire, since then there has been additional damage. So eventually we need to do an update or look at other agencies who are doing the update. But we have a starting point. And the government was very concerned with the rubble and wanted to make sure that this is integrated in the LEAP project. Except that the government had started with removal by providing funding to 3 institutions, High Relief Commission, Council of the South, and Union of Municipalities of Dahye were all provided funding from the government budget to initiate the removal of rubble up to ground floor. So without digging in underground, and with some conditions which, according to us as people who want to make the best use of sustainable approaches, like reusing a maximum of the rubble to avoid more use of more quarrying and production of cement. So and the practice, the best international practice, show that you can reuse up to 80%. So the discussion with the government was, okay, you have started with the removal. Do you want to reuse this material and properly dispose of it? And the answer was yes. So the part of this emergency assistance project is we agreed on a target of 70% for reusing. But this means that there is a whole process of processing of the rubble. So you need to crush, you need to sort, you need to sieve, you need to reproduce in different sizes and different shapes in order to be reused in different approaches. So this is being planned. We are identifying quarry sites where the temporary sites where the rubble is currently being deposited, so that the rubble can go to quarry site that will provide a space for treatment and will also provide space for disposal of the 30% of the reject, and also ensure that there is a rehabilitation plan for the quarry where the treatment will be done. All this is in the PAD. This description is in the pit, and we are supporting ahead of the approval of the LEAP project, working jointly with the Ministry of Environment to identify potential quarry site, whether public or private, talk with the landowner, the quarry owners, preparing bid documents for the treatment processes. So doing the back work that is needed so that once the project is approved, you can just proceed with implementation. So this is the type of work that is done by the bank, from assessment to preparation to collaboration with the implementing agency or other line ministries, to start preparation of bid documents, TORs, studies, to enable the implementation.
Okay. Lamia, maybe, so, you know, I think particularly in this country, but in the region, I'll come back, but I have a follow-up question to you, and maybe it'll be the same, Cyprien, but in a slightly different context. What I think many people in the room would be thinking was, we know the political economy of rubble in this country. You know, in 2006, we know the companies that profited from the rubble, how they got paid for it, how these companies are politically tied to the elites. We know the political economy of dam building in Lebanon. You know, people can go see the state of our dams and how much money was spent, the debt that got into the country, and that often the worst case scenarios end up going forward. And people would say, well, look, the country ends up stuck with debts. The political elites have enriched themselves. And actually, there is less justice. Our mountains are even more destroyed. And somehow in the process, communities were not meaningfully consulted. Yes, there were exercises. That's the sort of critique that you hear, I'm sure, all the time. And which frankly, I think resonates for a lot of, you know, we can go through different projects, particularly in I would say, badly governed countries. And, you know, we can argue, this is obviously not the World Bank's fault that we have bad governance in this country, but this is the current situation. So is there thinking, particularly given the experiences in this country, you know, I think Yara was talking about the multiple experiences of rebuilding and what happened and what worked. And there's been some innovation trying to bring in civil society, 3RF after the port explosion. I mean, these are framework, I mean, this is getting a bit too technical, but there have been attempts to sort of circumvent the issue of governance. But so it doesn't seem we're finding a breakthrough. It doesn't seem that we can point to a project, say, this is great, look at this community, it's thriving, they're super happy about the project. You know, I mean, we go along the coast and there are so many wastewater facilities that are simply not connected to the networks, you know, and it's been done by GIZ, it's been done by, anyways, I mean, so what is it that we can do today? I mean, one, how does the World Bank navigate difficult governance context? And you're from this country, I'm sure you're very familiar with all these examples. What is it that can be done if we're forward-looking, if we're thinking about today, to ensure that we take on board some of the lessons from the past, don't repeat the mistakes, and then maybe, Cyprien, it's the same question for you. I mean, how does AFD engage in these exercises, you know, in autocratic context, where frankly consultation is challenging, in context as well where we've seen it clearly, there might be competing environmental priorities between Europe and North Africa. You know, I live in France now. In France, people always talk about food sovereignty, but when it comes to North Africa, they talk about food security. Same institutions, same debates on TV, you know, and what people say, we want food sovereignty just like you want food sovereignty, you know, and so there are competing, you know, so how do we create spaces to address these issues of justice? And I think these are some of the issues that are animating a lot of people in the region of saying, we want a more meaningful say. Any sort of thoughts about how to maybe build bridges or address some of these issues?
I mean, yes, I am from Lebanon, and I see the status of infrastructure, especially after the financial crisis. So everything has collapsed. All the infrastructure has collapsed, and I see it mainly in the field of environment, wastewater treatment plant that stop operating, solid waste facilities that have stopped working. All this because we did not have any financial sustainabilities, a recovery system of the services. We want the government, as Lebanese, we want the government to pay for the services, which in Europe, it costs a lot of money. But in this country, we're still not ready to contribute. We are ready to pay the bill of the generator for electricity, but not the bill of the main line from the power. So this system of financial sustainability of the services needs to be rethought. And this is rethought by either we reduce our consumption, so we spend less money, less water, less electricity, we dispose less waste, because it costs money to. There is this debate that we are not able to get out of it. I mean, I have been following up on the solid waste field for the past 5 years, doing nothing, laser focused on solid waste. We still have no legal framework for allowing municipalities to collect some fees toward the services in order for them to be able to provide a basic service. It's blocked at the parliament, it's blocked it's a political system that is not allowing to move forward in the thinking of financial sustainability of basic services in the country. And it's a political dialogue. And it has to come from bottom up, because top down is not working. As simple as that. Yani, we don't give municipalities funding. We ask them to do the job, and people don't pay them. And how can they do the job? So, yani, for me as a Lebanese, the only way to change how basic services, and in a country, you need basic services to survive. Otherwise, we are subsidizing everything from our pockets. So this is what an institution like the World Bank would tell me. The day you have a law for solid waste cost recovery, come and tell me. My boss, this is what he tells me. When there is a legal framework for financial sustainability of this sector, come ask for money. In the meantime, I give you money, do as many studies as you want. This is what I do for the past 5 years. I do study, I talk, I engage, I participate, بس وصلنا لنتيجة؟ ما وصلنا لنتيجة.
So, Cyprien, similar question about challenges. And I want to, challenges obviously of the governance in our countries, but I also urge you to think about the challenges that come from, I mean, France has its own agenda, like any country, you know. I mean, if we had the representative of GIZ, I'd be pushing them that they're pushing the agenda of green hydrogen on the entire region, when the region has other priorities, frankly, but because where the money is, the attention is. So how, you know, what are some of the challenges of addressing a just transition framework in our region, both from what you're seeing from the different countries you're working on the region, but also reconciling, if you can, I don't know if you can, maybe the answer is ultimately AFD is Agence Française de Développement, and that's, you know, if you guys need to know what you're getting into when you work with us. Can you tell us a bit how you have these conversations, how you try to reconcile the debate between France, where frankly food sovereignty has been a national priority for decades, whereas when it comes to North Africa, it's often about let's help you become food secure, not food sovereign.
Okay. Okay, I'll try to respond. Do you want me to elaborate, but maybe on the later on like challenge of fragility, especially linked to conflict?
Yes,
okay.
Context
but
of conflict and the different temporalities,
but
and also the governance, but also yes,
no, but but in any case, I'll focus on your first question, which is of course very important. So. You know, I mean, AFD it's a public establishment that is it's a financial institution that is fully owned by the French government. So its objective is to you know, actually it's at the intersection of several interests, I would say. And one of them is the interest of the French government, of course. There was this 3D theory, you know, that was conceptualized, I think, in the US by the first Bush administration. 3Ds meaning, you know, 1D is for diplomacy, the other one is for defense, and the last one is for development. So development was thought as one aspect of a whole policy of a government to, and it was maybe the, you know, the soft aspect that now is being, you know, put into question by the new administration. But actually, you know, I believe that the objective is not only this one. It's of course the interest of the French government, but it also, you know, it also has objectives of contributing to well-being, in the sense that, and now that's the discourse that is promoted, that you know, we are all in the same world, that we have common interests, and so investing on common issues such as water, such as food, it's important for everyone. Otherwise, we can't have a stable planet, basically. So, yet I think you know, there is, I mean, the interest of the French state are there. I would say that there are some aspects. I mean, some to some extent, the sectors on which the French Development Agency is working on are sectors where you know, there is already a past knowledge of French companies or past experience of French companies involved. It's the case, for instance, for the water sector, for instance, developing feasibility studies. But afterwards, I mean, once this is passed to the boards, it's mostly implemented by local companies. So it's not only that, you know. I think as French Development Agency, we navigate a bit between the interest of the French government and also our objective, which is contributing to sustainable development goals. So we have to navigate between, you know, different interests, and what we attempt in each of the projects that we have is to be able to, you know, to within this context, to have a project that also to the most that benefits to the populations we want to serve. So that's, yeah, I would say that's the way I can approach it when I look at the French government. Now, if I look at the local governance, or the, you know, the you mentioned the autocratic context. And I would say that, you know, there are procedures at the AFD, and so some projects have to meet some criteria. And sometimes the procedures are able to, I mean, I can give you an example. For instance, there are projects of, I mean, around the world, there are many projects of, you know, how do you call it, desalination plants. So that's a big topic. We had a discussion this morning also on the fact that it has externalities, of course, if we don't focus on water losses at the same time. So that's a big issue. And actually, so the AFD has procedures that makes that we only fund desalination plants if they are meant for domestic use. So the use is for potable water and not for agriculture. Like, so for instance, there was big project in Morocco recently, which has not been funded by AFD, although there was a request from the Moroccan government, because it was meant also for agriculture. So that's, I mean, that's it's a way to, you know, to show you how we try to make our project meaningful, and you know, having thought the issues globally. To continue on autocratic context, I think that there are areas where, you know, then we won't go in, I think also, you know, linked with what you were saying, Lamia, we won't go in areas where we know that that's not right. So there are some sectors where we won't go because we know that there is no opportunity to improve the situation. Although we also go in areas where, you know, there is a possibility to issue loans, especially in countries where that have this capacity. So, you know, AFD is a financial institution that provide both loans and grants. And so, for instance, in countries like Lebanon, Palestine, it's only grants, but in most countries around the world, it's loans. So this also restricts the kind of intervention that we can have. We'll focus on more large interventions. So that's why, that's how we could navigate within this kind of environment. Now, if I go on the issue of fragility, so that's a kind of new topic, I would say, for AFD. I mean, to some extent, of course. I can tell you about how, I mean, for the region, it has been the case for the past 3-4 years. I mean, started with Lebanon, now it's also a big issue for Palestine. Although these contexts have always been complicated, but now this big issue of, you know, as development partners, as financial institutions, financial partners, how can we, you know, implement projects that are usually infrastructure ones, large-scale infrastructure projects, that takes time to be implemented, and while there are very pressing issues, issues of, you know, high vulnerability of populations, or issues where institutions are simply not able to work, although we are institutions that work with governments. So I can give you some example of the way we try to address it in Palestine, for instance, because this is a big issue, and this is really ongoing, an ongoing thought, because, you know, before 7th of October, so I mean, for a very long time, AFD, along with all development partners, and the World Bank is one of them, has been implementing many projects, sometimes quite successful. And now there is a big issue of, you know, incapacity to operate, first in Gaza, of course, but also in the West Bank. So some thoughts, but it's not easy. What we try to do is to have a better coordination with other stakeholders, like humanitarian stakeholders that have that target more life-saving activities, early recovery activities, as well as the political, the diplomatic stakeholders. So in this case, the French government, if it's able to, you know, create pressure on governments. We try to prioritize projects that have components that can be rapidly implemented, like more small-scale interventions, basically, or project with, you know, different kind of activities and activities that can be implemented whenever there is a need, and include more contingency lines within project budgets. So, like for instance, in Palestine, to have a budget for repair and maintenance works of water networks, which is a big issue for the Palestinian Water Authority. so that's a way to, I mean, make this institution a bit more agile and flexible in the way it operates. This work is it's being done in Palestine. In Lebanon, it's a bit more advanced because there was the financial crisis, so all of a sudden most infrastructure projects were stopped, and so there was a redirection of projects towards that were implemented by the government to NGOs, and also focusing on more grant funding and more small-scale interventions. So, yeah, that's
thank you.
what I can
I'm
say.
going to open it up to question. I have a lot of follow-up, but I think the point that you both raised, the issue of temporalities, reforms, particularly when we know adaptation is complicated, takes time, requires good governance. And a few years ago, it was all about NGOization and the critique of NGOization. I would argue today the problem is a critique of humanitarianization of everything in unstable, as opposed to development. So we're ending with just, we'd say in Arabic, ta'ir. We're just barely, and in the process, losing years. We're we're sort of digging ourselves. And I don't know how we get out of that. But I'm sure there are a lot of questions in the audience. So I'll go to the room. Kenj will take a round. See Kenj, see someone there. Yeah, please. I think Kenj, فيك تستعمل المايك على الطاولة. If you can also introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Kenj Ahmedi, and I'm like a previous academic and a consultant. I've been a consultant for a few years now, and through my career I lost one contract. It was a social environmental assessment contract. And basically, because my comment, really my question mostly to the World Bank, I mean to the World Bank as an institution, because of the different processes that are in place, and this not double messaging, but this type of messaging about participation and good governance, and then the early on shortcuts that adapt to the situation and develop the project, no matter without real political or social discussion. And the idea of this social economy, social environmental social impact assessment is really a strong conflict of interest. It's a document that is prepared by the company or the institution that is going to implement the program. So it has interest in implementing the program, and it's overseen by the government who has interest in implementing the program, and in the case of the World Bank ones, it's overseen by the World Bank who has also interest in giving a loan. So really it's a document that has a strong conflict of interest, and it's very hard to give an independent or really a proper assessment without having to deal with those three entities that so often hire a consulting company to implement this type of study, and it's end up it's a first important problem of this type of procedure. The second one, it's really a process that drawn you in detail. It goes in very, very, very heavy technical details, and we were talking about just like a lawyer agreement, which is very long, and nobody really is able to understand what's going on inside of it from a technical point of view. And put aside, as Nadim was asking or hinting at, put aside all the social processes or the political discussion that needs to happen around big infrastructure like Bisri dams or even waste management infrastructure. So it's really a long process, a tiring process, and a process that happened way more, as you said, before the project is implemented. And then when we arrive to the moment where this program or this loan is going to be approved by the government, and because we often short on time for whatever reasons, we find shortcuts. We forgot all the effort that were done, and we find shortcuts. At least this is the impression that we have. We find shortcut and we implement the project. For example, the Bisri Dam, which is the main example, the study was done like years before, and nobody was aware of what's happening. And when we really came to the discussion, if we didn't have a very strong social movement, most probably the project will have been implemented. So it's a very complex technical process with very little political engagement and social engagement with civil society and with political movement, not only with civil society. The second way also the World Bank sent for us a mixed message is, for example, lately during the crisis, the World Bank had a series of economical reports, very strong economical report, very strong title, to the point that we were joking that the next title of the next report will have the F word in it toward the government and do something about what's going on. And then suddenly we have the GATE program out of nowhere, $200 million with the Ministry of Economy and Trade to the agricultural sector, using the same shortcuts, using the same entity, providing it to the Ministry of Economy because apparently it's supposed to go into food security, but really it's talking about agriculture, and then giving loans through entities that do not give loans but are supposed to give guarantees, and really like everybody's surprised with the World Bank coming up with a program that needs to be approved now to move on also because there is interest in giving a loan, there is interest in doing that. So how can we get gradually out of and this is more particular to the World Bank because, I mean, other donors, and here no, I'm not Mahab Jamil, but other donors have smaller budget, let's put it that way. So they interact more, they take more their time, they talk more to the people. World Bank has a big, huge budget. How can we gradually get out of this dichotomy between long, inefficient, not say inefficient, but sterile, I don't know, sterile apparently is not a political word, whatever, process that are not talking about the political and end up being useless because we end up having shortcuts, and how we can gradually having a proper political discussion with civil society and with political actors to make sure those programs are more discussed in depth with us, with everybody, with people.
Thank you, Kenj. So actually, I'm mindful of time, so we're going to do 2 rounds of questions. So anyone who has a question, please, the gentleman in the back, and please try to keep your interventions short, so we give chance to our speakers to address. And remember to introduce yourself.
I'm from Tunisia. I'm a climate negotiator, also a climate adaptation expert. I wanted to ask the AFD about the Adapt Action Program or initiative. You mentioned you have 2 projects in Tunisia, 2 projects that were funded to Tunisia by the Adaptation Fund and the GAF, which is the Green Environmental Fund, I guess, concerning the oasis. And as far as I know, there is like a regional observatory entity in Africa, which is the OSS, Observatoire du Sahara et Sahel. So I wanted to know concerning the assessment, how is it done? Is it feasible? Is it fair? I want to know more about the assessment, and is it done before and after the project, and it's done by whom exactly? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please. Yara.
Hello, Yara Abdel Khaliq, architect and urban researcher from Public Works Studio. I want to ask about the loan concerning the rubble. I want you to clarify if the World Bank is phasing this loan, has concrete conditions on this, because what we know about the rubble till now is that there are only 2 statements from the previous government with 645 allocated plots of quarries and what you mentioned. And we don't have a certain vision or strategic plan, a national plan, or even a framework for execution. And the rubble is being disposed right now in temporary, what the government calls temporary sites in Mreiji to go in Dahi, to go to the Costa Brava for its extension, which is, I don't know how environmentally just this is. And in other plots, like you said, in Bint Jbel, Ba'a, or other areas, like they are saying they are temporary plots, maybe from the list, maybe public properties, we don't know. But we are afraid that they will become permanent plots in the meantime. So are there conditions for a certain vision, for a certain framework, pre-funding? Are there other loans that the government is asking for other viable needs, like we don't know about, like compensation or other things related to reconstruction? And is the government basing this on a certain vision or a certain plan that it is giving to the World Bank to take such loans on the basis of these plans?
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, I'm mindful of time. If people, so I saw two hands. If it's okay, we're just going to do this because we're not going to do a second round. We're not going to have time. So please, and then. بس على السريع.
على السريع. أتوقع أن كل من اشتغل على السياسات على الوضع الاقتصادي في منطقتنا يعرف حجم الإرث الكولونيالي وحجم الإرث الذي أتى بعده من جراء المناويل الاقتصادية التي تقيد بلداننا. واليوم الحديث على بعض المساحات للنقاش كيف نحسن هذا الشيء أو كيف أي إجابة نعطي لموضوع الأدابتيشن أو هذا، نحن نعلم أن هذا من ضرب الخيال. نحن نحتاج تغيير جدي لمناويل الاقتصادية في بلداننا، والطريق الأقصر لهذا هو أن نتمكن من على الأقل تعطيل سداد الديون التي نحن اليوم مقيدون بها. فهل ليس هذا أسهل طريق بكل بساطة؟ على الأقل أن يتم نزع الديون الكارهة والديون غير القانونية. أنا من بلد في تونس الذي تقيد منواله الاقتصادي من الاستقلال، من قبل الاستقلال، عبر السياسات الاستخراجية ثم عبر حتى منشآت المياه بمنوال اقتصادي معين، وهو اليوم يخنقنا هذا المنوال، وعلينا اليوم الخروج من هذا المنوال ووضع إطار على وهذا أعلم أن هذه مش مسؤوليتكم، يعني نقاشنا الوطني الداخلي ونقاشنا الإقليمي حول هذه المسألة هو شيء لا يخصكم. أنتم تعملون حسب رؤيتكم وهذا حقكم، يعني هذا لا، لكن ألا ترون أنه من الأجدى اليوم نقاش موضوع الديون في منطقتنا؟
Okay. Wait for intervention.
أنا كان عندي كمان نفس النقطة تبع كنج، إنه المشاريع يلي عم تنعمل بالتمويل من الدول الكبرى أو من حتى من الورد بانك، وقت نجي نسأل عن المشروع إنه كيف تنفذ وكيف انعمل، الورد بانك بيقلنا إنه هيدا الشيء هو كان مقترح من الجهة يلي قدمته، مقابل إنه الجهة اللي قدمته أو اللي نفذت بتقلنا إنه هيدا كان فرض عليها من الجهات المانحة. فبدنا نعرف يعني الحقيقة، هل أنتم بتفرضوا على الأشخاص المنفذين تنعرف مين بدنا نحاسب؟ لأنه يعني سد بسري وسد جني إنه وقت رحنا كرمال نسألهم للنواب والوزراء قالوا لنا إنه هيدا يعني انفرض علينا إنه نعمل هيدا الشيء، وأشخاص تانيين قالوا إنه لا، يعني وقت سألنا الجهات المانحة قالوا لنا إنه فعليا هن كان بدهم هيدا الشيء. سو اذا فيكم توضحوا لنا هيدي الفكره اكثر. بالنسبه لموضوع الكومبوست او موضوع فرز النفايات، مثل ما انتم كمان تبعتوه نحن تبعناه من 2014، هو بيمشي، بس المشكله فيه انه نحن ما اخذناه بالشق القانوني من الاول، اخذتوه بالشق القانوني من الاخير، فنفذتوا المشاريع وبعدين بالاخير جيتوا قلتوا خلينا يعني نشوف بالقانون إذا بيمشي الحال، وطلع بالقانون إنه ما بيمشي الحال. شكرا.
Okay, shukran. So I turn it back to you each, which questions you want to address, and I'll add, maybe I'll use my moderator privilege, one last question. What would you like to have more of in terms of civil society engagement? If you were making a recommendation to this room, many of them are researchers, activist civil society, what is there a message you would like to give them? Say, you know, we would welcome more of this sort of stuff. But please, maybe Cyprien, we'll start with you. There were a couple of questions, or let me إذا بدك حابة.
As you wish.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I tried to answer 2 questions. Let me check, because I think not all of them were addressed
It
to
was
me.
the issue of Tunisia,
Yeah.
and the issue of the debts. We're not
Yeah.
going to pay our debts to you
Yeah.
anymore.
So on this one, yes, I can, I'll have a formal response and then I'll try to elaborate. So AFD is a financing institutions, and so it has procedures, so meaning that we can't finance a country that have a certain level of debt. So for instance, in the first phase of adaptation, sorry, Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire was part of the countries that were partnering with this initiative. And for the second phase, it has been removed because the country reaches certain level of debt that would not make it, I mean, the procedure of AFD would not accept that a project would be supported by this program. So that's just to give you an example of how we try to not over-in-depth countries and eventually their citizens or their populations. I don't know if I can say more on this. As you said, it's also public debate. I think every country, every society has the right to decide on it. They are I mean, in this region, for instance, which is not representative of AFD's work. So AFD has about 80% of its funding made of loans and 20% of grants. But in this region, especially the Middle East, I mean, it's mostly grants. So I mean, there is less in-depthness than in other countries. Yeah.
Quickly, what would you like to hear, to have more from this room?
Yeah.
In the future?
This is not easy to answer. Actually, so I think in the case of Lebanon, but it's elsewhere the case, we have projects where civil society organizations are implementing these I mean, activities. And in the case of adaptation, climate adaptation, we have this concept, a bit of a concept, but I mean, just to give you the way I mean, then we can think about how to operationalize it. It's called locally led adaptation. So locally led adaptation means that in projects that are locally led, we try to, give the communities, the population, the capacity to decide on the kind of activities that they will implement. I can give you an example of a project in Senegal that is currently supported by Adaptation, and where there's this kind of grant mechanism with call for projects and with eligible criteria that is implemented, that is being launched, and where school communities can finance, curriculums, school communities, school activities, for instance. And in a way, I mean, more globally, I would say that it's good that civil society is making it's playing its role, which is to make governments accountable, and this also helped to have more responsiveness from governments and to have policies that and projects that respond to needs. So I guess civil society plays its role. It's also good for everyone in the end.
Thank you very much. Lamia, there were a number of questions as well.
I will start with the easy one, which is the LEAP project, because I covered only the rubble part of the LEAP project, which is around 30 million out of 250. All the rest goes for infrastructure rehabilitation, based on the assessments that were done by under the RDNA, and based on criteria for identification of priority areas where there should be rehabilitation, how the rehabilitation needs to be done in a comprehensive approach in a specific area. So there is a lot of thinking that has been put based on international experience and based on discussion with the government that was issued as a Council of Ministers decision, because you can get stuck with a framework project like the GATE project. You just draw a framework, and we have example where you draw a framework, and then when you come to the implementation, this is where the fighting starts, and you can spend months not being able to identify the specific intervention because of, unfortunately, political interests. So under LEAP, you just Google the PID LEAP Lebanon, you will see the description of the selection criteria, but also this made a debate in the country because you are looking at specific area, not all the areas. So how do we ensure a balanced reconstruction for the whole country with 250 million? It's not possible, so you have to start somewhere, and this somewhere has been approved by the Council of Ministers. So the government could have said, no, I don't want this. Okay, like the bank presented like lessons learned from previous example of recovery. Yes, you can do a bit here and a bit here and a bit here, but not get to real returns on investments. But you can focus your investments to rehabilitate the whole area from all aspects, education and energy and health and infrastructure, and make sure that these people can have a decent living. Okay, you are leaving people behind. So my take, yeah, we should not leave anyone behind. And we should keep asking for the recovery of after this crisis. I think we tend to forget that this country has gone through a war of 2 years and affected our economy and our well-being and the coherence of the country. And we need to keep this in sight. And I really value the efforts of all the academia, NGOs who are bringing this back to the table and ringing the bell. Don't forget those people who have suffered after 2 years of very extensive attacks on them. So this is on LEAP. You can Google, you can find this information. On the selection, whether GATE was imposed upon or not, or whether BISRI was imposed upon or not, it's, I mean, at the end of the day, this is a loan, and it's the parliament that is going to vote it. And if the country doesn't want it, they don't vote it. Until now, I can tell you, GATE has not been voted, which means maybe it's not a big priority. Maybe it will, when the time will come. I mean, again, I go back to the last one of the Council of Ministers decision, which approved the selected areas of LEAP where the reconstruction will be prioritized. And they referred to GATE as a means to rehabilitate rural areas and agricultural areas in the damaged areas in Lebanon. So, okay, maybe at the time, 2 years ago when it was prepared, maybe it was not presented in a way where it shows its value added. I was part of the GATE. I included the environmental component because I mean, you know, at the end of the day, it's a fight. The agriculture team will fight for more agriculture funding, and I, as an environmentalist, I was debating, like, you want to do agriculture development in lands that are polluted with solid waste and wastewater. So I got a component on solid waste and wastewater. But then the whole thing, how do you ensure its sustainability? How do you ensure its safeguards? That this framework approach has proper safeguards and proper sustainability. This is it. No, at the end of the day, like you said, this is development, and we have to start somewhere. The sky is the limit, and there is so much level, very limited capacity for lending, and no one is giving grants, and the Lebanese are not paying from their pocket, so you're stuck again. Sorry about that.
Stuck. Please join me in thanking Lamia and Cyprien for taking part in this exercise with us. Thank you very much for the frank exchange. I want to also thank the interpreters, and thank you all for your really active participation. We've been going for a very long day, so really appreciate it. Quick housekeeping. So we will meet at 7:45 in the lobby for those going from the hotel, and I hope all of you would join us for dinner. The hotel, if people want to go walk before, it's Loris, right? Loris in Jemaize. But those of you in the hotel, please meet at 7:45 in the lobby. There will be buses to take us there. Tomorrow we start at 9:30 again. And please bring the same level of energy and interest that you've displayed today. And thank you very much.